Hey, welcome to the channel. My name's Dan, and this is the first episode of my game engine development journey. Unlike many seasoned game engine developers, I am not one of those. I'm starting from scratch. I have no game engine development experience. I have no game development experience. I'm just a standard software engineer with a pure passion and willingness to learn. We're going to explore the ins and outs of game engines together, breaking down the complex parts into bite-sized, understandable pieces. Think of this channel as a learning journey, not just for me, but hopefully for you too. Whether you're a fellow game engine noob like me, or a seasoned professional, I'll try and make sure that this is interesting for everyone. Along the way, we'll tackle many new challenges. We'll celebrate the successes, but we'll also celebrate the failures. And believe me, there will be many. So if you're just curious how games actually work, or you already know and you want to help me learn, then you're in the right place. I'm hoping this is going to be entertaining, and I'm also hoping this is going to be educational. But one thing I do know for sure is that it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's jump in. Now, I've actually started this game engine already. I've been working on it for about 9 to 10 months. Very slowly. I have a young family and a full-time job. So you can view all the source code on my GitHub, and I'll post a link in the description of how to get there. But for now, my game engine is called Evie, E-V-I-E. I'm attempting to make Evie engine build for macOS, Linux, and Windows, and you can see in my CI that I test against all three of these platforms. So Ubuntu 20, macOS 11, Windows 2019, and Windows 2020. So you may be wondering how I actually got to start this project and where I began. And it actually started with a YouTuber called the Cherno, who has his own game engine playlist. So I thoroughly recommend that you go and check the Cherno's playlists out. And in specific, if you're interested in the game engine series, then his game engine series. But I stopped following the Cherno from about 25 to 30. And the problem that I found following the Cherno's videos were that I was just copying what he was doing, and I wasn't actually thinking for myself. So I ended up stopping watching his videos and just went and researched the topics myself and tried to think about how I would implement things. I found that since doing that, I've learned a lot more, and it's been quite enjoyable. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out the Cherno, I would definitely recommend. He was the one that kickstarted my project off by showing me the basics, and now here I am, documenting what I'm doing. Here we go. This is Evie engine. It's a C++ OpenGL game engine, and I mostly chose OpenGL because of the amazing resource that you can get from a website called learnopengl.com. And this is fantastic, and it's taught me a lot of the initial steps, which I hope to also explain in videos later on. Even though I'm using learnopengl.com, I hope that in the future we could potentially support other rendering backends like Vulkan. The engine uses CMake as its main build system, and it integrates quite nicely into VS Code actually, with the different extensions where we can install and build and configure CMake as necessary. And I use VS Code as my main IDE, which I enjoy a lot as it's quite flexible. The layout of the project and the CMake files here, for example, are all taken from Jason Turner's CPP best practices CMake template repository. And you can use this repository as a proper template by clicking up here and creating a new repository, and it will clone that repository and ask you for a few placeholder names so that it can then fill out the rest of the templated files in the repository. This is a really great repository by Jason, but in hindsight I think I probably would have just started on my own, knowing what I know now, as I feel like although it has a lot of good stuff in it, it's made the project become a bit more complicated than I'd like it to be in regards to the build system and its CMake setup. In regards to testing, I'm trying to keep Evie engine testable. So you can see here on the left hand side in the test explorer, I have all of these unit tests that we can run, and they should all pass. There we go. So hopefully we can keep that up. Obviously some things aren't really that testable when they kind of use system calls or kind of external dependencies, but there are ways around that, and it depends how much passion we've got to create those. At the minute, Evie engine is capable of opening a window, handling input, creating GUI interfaces with IMGUI, and rendering 3D objects using OpenGL. Let me show you a small example of all of these things happening. So you can see here there's a 3D light source that's spinning around, and we're rendering a cube with a specific material. And this is IMGUI's use case in the engine. So we can change the material and it reflects nicely in the cube in the middle. And each of these materials have different properties and material properties, and they all interact differently with the light source, and hopefully we'll get onto that later on. So I've tried to logically split out the engine into different shared libraries, and you can see here I've got window, rendering, logger, entry point, ECS. Now this is okay, but I don't know how much I like it, and I might change it in the future. But as you can see, we can link against all the different shared libraries, so at the application shared library, logging, rendering, and the ECS. I don't know how much I like this, we'll see. So far as dependencies, let's take a look. So I do use glfw for window creation and input handling, glm for maths, spdlog for logging, fmt for text formatting, doctest for unit testing. We also have imgui in here, and that's rendered inside the repository. We use glad for the OpenGL function pointer loading, and stb for some image loading. So quite a few dependencies, but they're all reasonable considering it's a solo game engine project and I need to cut corners where possible. One of the things that I find really interesting is the entity component system. This is a custom entity component system, probably very similar to many entity component systems out there. I just wanted to write my own because it was fun to write and it taught me a lot, and I think I'll do a video on its design and implementation if you're interested. So let's move to the examples a bit more. Now, all the examples are effectively the games that use the engine, and as you can see, like I showed before, they all just link to Evie. So application, logging, rendering, entity component system. And if we, for example, let's load the spinning box example. And in this, all we do is we create 10 cubes with a transform component, and we add that component to each of the cubes, and we also provide a velocity of -1 in the y direction, so they should be falling. Let's run spinning box, and as you can see, they are falling through the sky, and some of them are spinning and some of them aren't. I think I have a mixer in this as well. Yeah, so we can go between the two different textures that are mapped onto the cubes, and we can fly around with our camera as well and check out what the boxes are doing. So the other examples that we've got are, I've shown the lighting, all lighting example. Now this one covers, and as you probably recognize from the thumbnail, this one covers ambient lighting from directional sources. It covers point lights, so the influence of lights, these white light sources are all point lights, and then spotlights, which, as you can see, hopefully, as I move my mouse around, you can kind of see this flashlight effect where things at my viewport are being lit up. And I've just created a specular map for the spotlight so that when it shines on things, it shows up this cool kind of AI generated laptop image. So there we have it. Evie engine so far. It probably doesn't seem like a lot of progress to some of you, but I do have a full-time job and a family. I really only get a chance to work on it when I can find time. I'm hoping these videos will provide some regularity to its development. If you want me to go into more detail about any of the things that I've shown you today, then let me know in the comments. But for now, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.